I'm Batman.
So, hey everybody. I have been using the excuse for the past, week, 2 weeks to not talk about the Robert Pattinson as Batman thing because it wasn't official. It was likely, I acknowledged that, but it wasn't officially confirmed by Warner Brothers, by the people making the movie. So I use that as an excuse to have to neither talk nor think about it. Well, it's official now. So, yeah. Let's actually talk about this. And, just to briefly, to defend my putting it off, yeah, part of it was laziness, but also, everyone else seems to forget this, but I remember when it was unofficially confirmed that Joaquin Phoenix was going to be Doctor Strange, and that didn't happen either. I mean, it's stuff like that that's why I usually wait for the official confirmations and almost never devote videos to rumor. I don't like things ending up being that outdated when it turned out not to be true. But in any case, why do I have that kind of integrity on a site this small? I really should just be going all out and going for the clicks and just talking about rumors as soon as they hit. Why do I have integrity? It's hurting my growth. Seriously. Anyways, so Robert Pattinson is going to be Batman. Okay. People are freaking out as they tend to, I can only think of one time that we ever had casting for Batman that didn't seem to tick off most fans, and that was Christian Bale. And I honestly think the only reason that people weren't, if he hadn't had American Psycho under his belt, I think it would have been just as much. They would have been like, the guy from Newsies? Just like they're going right now, the guy from Twilight? Come on. He's an actor. Most actors have a chunk of their resume that is embarrassing. And the difference is Robert Pattinson's biggest hit happened to be the embarrassing thing. And if you don't think he's personally embarrassed by those movies, just seek out some of the interviews he's given or listen to some of the commentary tracks that he's on. He does not think very highly of those movies. He was obviously in that for the same reason Kristen Stewart was, because his agent told him it was going to be a really good idea. And they were right. But anyway, I don't want this to become a thing about Twilight. Twilight wrapped up long enough ago that, honestly, people should be able to let it go. And as much as Twilight wasn't good, because it wasn't, it was not the end of pop culture. And it didn't really leave much of a lasting stain on the culture, as much as the detractors would like to say. I get it for people who have been into vampires way before Twilight, that felt like a real dirtying of their fan. I have fans who were really into Anne Rice or original Dracula and or anything like Vampire the Masquerade or what have you, and maybe took that stuff a little too seriously. But I get where if that's your monster of choice, seeing something like Twilight happen could take you off. But unless you're that specifically, people got way too worked up about that. And honestly, I think in terms of his previous resume, prior to taking on the role of Batman, I think the closest comparison for somebody who's already played Batman to Robert Pattinson is Christian Bale. The only difference is Pattinson had a much bigger, series, but other than that, pretty boy young actor has spent most of his adult career in smaller indie-ish films that get decent critical reviews and aren't particularly well seen. I mean, that was Christian Bale prior to becoming Batman for the most part. And as far as how well he'll play the role, I mean, my main concern is just going to be the accent. And that's just assuming they get him working with the right dialect coach. I'm not even that worried about it. So, what are the actual qualifications to play Batman and play it decently? Honestly, having a good script and a decent director. I would argue that none of the actors who have played Batman, none of them were inherently bad or wrong for the part. Some of them were in projects that were doing a kind of Batman or a take on Batman or a very confused take on Batman that at their ground level were not going to work, and who played them wasn't going to save it. I think that's happened more than a few times. I think Val Kilmer is a pretty decent Batman, all things considered. I think George Clooney is... well, he's not the problem with that movie. Let's put it that way. I think Ben Affleck, well, in Batman v Superman, he was one of the few things that almost worked. And then in Justice League, they just retooled the character from what he was cast to do so much that he felt out of place. But again, the problems, like Batman working is going to depend so much on the writing and the directing. I would say much more so than a lot of other superheroes. So, like... you can build something out of a great central performance on Superman, on Iron Man, absolutely. I mean, Robert Downey Jr., you built that entire thing on that performance. But the thing is, and like, Batman fans, please don't at me, more often than not, Batman's the least interesting thing in his own stories, and that's been especially true on film. So, in order to get a decent Batman movie, it doesn't make or break on who you cast as Batman. Or here's another way to put it. There's been, to my way of thinking, no Batman movie that was good except for the guy playing Batman. The Batman movies that aren't good are not good for a litany of reasons, and maybe also didn't have a Batman that really worked. But I've never seen a movie where it's like, that was a good Batman movie, but they didn't quite cast that central part right. So, getting overly hung up on Robert Pattinson playing him, to me, just strikes as a misallocation of your concern. And this is not me saying there's no reason to be concerned. I got plenty of reason to be concerned, mainly because Warner Brothers, in terms of their handling of DC, I'm waiting for their track record to improve steadily, because Wonder Woman was good. Aquaman was fun. I actually like Justice League a lot better than a whole lot of people did, but it was also kind of a mess, so But I've seen things going in a direction where they're going to be, or they could be better. Getting James Gunn in Suicide Squad 2, Wonder Woman 2, they got Patty Jenkins back for that. I'm seeing things heading in a direction where this could work, but I need to see the trajectory continue. And until it does, I am going to continue to be skeptical of anything that Warner Brothers has its hands in, because Warner Brothers is a meddling studio. So, my big questions on this are still, what's the story? What's the tone? And that second one might actually be the biggest thing for me, because Batman has been around long enough and has enough facets to him, both as a character and in terms of his rogues gallery, because which villains you pit him against is going to drastically shift the tone of the film, that you have a lot of leeway, that you could go action, that you could go horror tinged, that you could go mystery, that you could go noir. There's a lot of directions and tones that you could adopt. And that's kind of what I really want to get a good sense of. Pattinson himself, I think, he's a decent enough actor that he'll slot into most of those things. I don't know how good he'd be in an action scene, but Batman in an action scene is in the full costume. It's just going to be the stunt guy anyways. What Pattinson or anyone playing Batman, playing Bruce Wayne, has to be able to convey is a sense of intelligence, a sense of complexity, a sense of duality. Because that's what the best Batman portrayals have provided. And for me, for the record, in case anybody is wondering, the best live action Batman for me has still been Michael Keaton. The best Batman overall is still Kevin Conroy. That second one shouldn't really be up for debate. But in any case, even with hiccups and issues with the other Batman portrayals, for the most part, some of them still do something pretty well. Somewhere along the line. And again, because Batman, and especially like with, and again, this is rumor, with the rumor that this is going to be a very loaded cast, like a lot of villains, like to the point that people have wondered, is this based off the Arkham Asylum games or what have you, which I doubt. But there's a rumor of a very long list of villains making some kind of appearance in this, and that's just going to emphasize further the fact that Batman tends to be the least interesting character in these films, especially. But I think honestly, even in the comics, more often than not, Batman is not the most interesting thing. He can be on occasion, but that's the minority of stories, at least in my own personal opinion. Like Dark Knight Returns, Batman's really interesting. Batman Year One, he's really interesting. But most of them, like, I love No Man's Land. He's not the most interesting thing going on in it. I love The Long Halloween. He's not the most interesting thing going on in it. And, who they get to be the jawline, I think Robert Pattinson has a solid jawline. He will be a perfectly serviceable jawline. I have probably spent maybe 3 minutes total of what will probably end up being, a 13-minute video or whatever, actually talking about Robert Pattinson. I don't know. This is why I avoided talking about him up to this point. I don't find the casting that interesting one way or the other. I don't think it's a reason to sound the alarm, nor do I think it's like, ooh, that sounds really good. So I'll wait and see, which is kind of just my holding pattern with the Warner Brother DC movies right now. Some of them have been better lately. I want them to keep getting better, but they haven't earned my trust yet. So I'm in a wait and see pattern. Same thing with this casting. But it's official! So I'm finally open to talking about it. What do you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's a whole bunch of stuff to do because there's buttons, links, Patreon, rewards for supporting me. Also, you help make this show better. And, social media, my book, etc., etc., etc. Links are all down in the description. Give them a click or don't. You don't have to, because at the end of the day, folks, you are the council. I'm just running the meetings. Until next time, this council is adjourned.